annual meeting of the Plantation Owners Association Board of Directors to order. That's the second to the last time I get to do that. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. There is a formality that we will follow throughout this morning's meeting. And I'd like to mention ahead of time that there will be a recess as Mr. Hartman has to leave to take the ballot boxes to the PAC, where a large committee of volunteers is waiting to count the votes. And we will stay in recess until Mr. Hartman returns. So just give you a heads up for that. The first order of business is to establish a quorum. Mr. Secretary.
Mr. President, in accordance with the PPOA bylaw Article 6, Section 6, quorum, the members holding 10% of the total voting rights of the corporation shall constitute a quorum at a membership meeting. We presume a quorum is established with both members present and ballots cast.
So therefore, we have a quorum of the membership, and we'll then move to the next item, and we'll go out of order. And I'd like to introduce Mr. Joe Hartman, who's chairman of the Elections Committee. And Joe, if you can introduce those members of the committee, President.
My committee's all down counting ballots. Anyway, there are 42 volunteers down at the PAC, counting as I speak at this point. I'm going to go back there as soon as I get done here, run out the door, grab the last ballot box, go on down, and we'll count. We hope to be back fairly soon, but I don't know exactly how long that will be. So, thank you very much, and have a good meeting.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you. Express our thanks to your committee from the board for their work. Now, I know that's not me because I forgot to bring my phone. So, and by the way, if you don't mind, go ahead and turn your phone windows off. Next item of business is approval of the minutes. I presume that there are no changes to the annual minutes of March 4th, 2017. Are there any changes or amendments to those minutes? If not, we'll presume that the minutes are approved as amended or as written. Now I'd like to just say a few words about our term here on the board, and when I say our, I mean the three of us that were elected 3 years ago to the board. It's been an honor for me to serve as first a committee, as a board member, then as vice president, and then as president of the board. I have made those comments in the column. I've also expressed them this past Thursday, and they are on the web. I'd encourage you to go to our website and look at the president's comments from the Thursday meeting. I'd also like to recognize my two classmates, if you will, Dick Kite and Ross Corns. Dick has served as treasurer, Ross as secretary of the board. Over the past 3 years, I've gotten to know each of them as members of the board and as friends. I remember that the first real time we got together was when Ross and Dick and I rode in Ross's car, that big Suburban, as we drove around early in December 3 years ago to serve as judges for the Christmas decoration contest. We had absolutely no qualifications to do that. Unfortunately, we brought our significant others and their wives, and they explained to us how we should vote for the winners of that. So that was a lot of fun. I think there were a couple bottles of wine in the car as we traveled around. But over the last several years, I've gotten to know both Dick and Ross for their work. Ross has been so helpful in moving our HR procedures forward and our communications enterprise forward as well. Both of those are works in progress. We hope that over over the next couple of years, we'll be able to establish new positions in those areas, and that would be a director of human relations and a director, the way I would call it would be a manager of social media and public relations. And so Ross has worked real hard to first understand how each of those processes work in our community and then make recommendations for their improvement. Both of them are equally important for us. We have 140 employees right now, and moving towards an employee base of 200 people, we really need to create a new position and budget it as manager of human relations. And so, Ross, thank you so much for that. And the other effort Ross has made has been to struggle with this new element of communication that we're facing in social media. For us, it's next door. And we really haven't figured out how to do that. Ross has worked real hard on trying to do the right thing for the community and for the board, and being able to respond to issues that arise on next door, and also to present initially the facts as they are. And it's been a struggle for the whole board, and I know Ross is going to stay on as perhaps chairman of our communications committee, I hope, and move that project forward. I've known Dick Kite for many years. In fact, when I first moved to Pecan 10 years ago, I was director of ground operations for the Fort Worth Air Show. I finally retired after 20 years as that volunteer position, and we had several programs that we ran throughout the year, and one of them was to bring in youngsters to learn about aviation. And I was asked if I knew any airline pilots who might be able to come and explain to these youngsters what it meant to be an aviator. And I asked my friend John McComas, who I met early on as I moved here, who he would recommend, and he said, well, Dick Kite's the man. So I went over and introduced myself to Dick and asked him if he would do that, and he said sure, and he put on his airline pilot's uniform. He had just recently retired from American Airlines, and he flew his Poland Special, which is the fastest four-cylinder piston engine aircraft in the world. Am I still correct about that? And he owns many, many records. And I was there, and I watched him taxi up and park in front of the big Alliance Airport hangar and get out and take his leather hat off, which is the silliest looking thing that aviators wear. Spruced himself up and went in, and he was the highlight of the day for those youngsters who were learning about being aviators. And that's been my impression of Dick as long as I've known him. First, just as a friend and someone who's willing to help out in the neighborhood and on my airplane and others, and now as a board member. And Dick was so instrumental in working with Michael and Bob Cope in changing the way we present our financial information to you, to the community. And so as you'll see in our annual financial report, that those numbers now are much more easy for us to understand. And so for that work on the board, we should be grateful to Dick. And also, for my own personal gratitude for someone who I could go to and just ask his opinion on how things were going. So to Dick and Ross, thank you so much for your work and support for us on the board. I see Dick reaching for the mic, so yeah, if you want to take something.
I'll get a chance to talk, but thanks for those remarks, Bob.
Yeah. Now the treasurer's report, and so I do yield the floor to Mr. Kite, who's treasurer, and he'll start the process of reporting on our annual financial audit and report.
Thanks, Bob. I'm going to do a little bit of a review on audits because it seems to be a topic of conversation lately. This is our auditor's report. It's what's called an external audit, and it's where an auditing firm comes into our operation and they look at balance sheets, checking accounts, and then verify that the money that we're reporting is correct. Another type of an audit would be an internal audit, and this would be something that we would do on our own, maybe with the help of somebody with auditing expertise. Probably that would be a good idea. And the best example I can come up with, a reason for an internal audit, is to look for procedural changes. Like, let's say we had a project that's ongoing, and because of the few number of people that we have working on projects within Pecan, other than volunteers, let's say that the person who sends out the bids to get quotes for doing this particular job is the same person that receives them and presents them to the board, and then that person is the one who supervises the construction of the project and then receives the check at the end. And that doesn't give you enough checks and balances. There should be more different people involved to prevent the opportunity for things that are amiss to happen. So that's what an internal audit would be looking for. Then there's another term called a forensic audit. And a forensic audit is where the internal audit shows up something that looks suspicious. And then you might really dive in and go look at something in particular because you think something is amiss. So just for grins, this report we have done annually. It costs us approximately $25,000. An internal audit would be roughly the same, maybe a little bit more, and a forensic audit would be vastly more costly. So I just wanted to lay that out there. Now, having said all that, the important page of this, kind of the executive summary, talks about the report. They look at financial statements. They look at management's responsibility. They look at the auditor's responsibility. And then at the bottom, they publish their opinion. And I think we need to advance a slide. The opinion is, in our opinion, the consolidated financial statements referred to above present fairly, in all material respects, the financial position of Pecan Plantation Owners Association, Incorporated, as of October 31st, 2017. So that's the end of our fiscal year. We're now, 4 months into a new year, and this is all as of October 31st. The changes in its member and tenant fund balances and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. So that is their opinion summary paragraph. Now I'll pass it off to Michael, who will review the actual numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. We're going to talk about the financials for the fiscal year ending October 31st, 2017. Again, this is just a snapshot in time, but as of October 31st, we have total operating cash of a little over $1 million. And we'll spend, depending on the month and when invoices come in, about $500,000. So again, that's just a snapshot in time of what our funds were. This is going into how we ended up the year. Our total revenues, we had a great year in revenues. You can see on the top line, $6.7 million. That was $92,000 over our budget. And if you look on the far right, $128,707 ahead of prior year. So our operational departments did very well, and we had a good year in membership. Cost of goods sold, you would expect our cost of goods sold to increase as your sales increase. If you look, it was only $21,000 more than last year on $92,000 increase in sales. And then you see the gross is simply the revenues minus your cost of sales. And then down to the labor numbers. This year has been a tough year for finding staff. It's a very tough labor market. Everybody's seen all the businesses that have come into Granbury. And so we've been short for most of the year in facilities maintenance, grounds, and golf maintenance. So our cost of labor, taxes, and benefits was $3,714,000 on a plan of $3,755,000. A positive variance of $40,000. And generally, obviously, you like to spend all your labor dollars because we are a little bit short-staffed in some areas. And only $35,000 ahead of last year's numbers. So in payroll, we only spent $35,000 over what we spent last year. On the expense line, you can see we went over $2 million in expenses. $37,811 over our budget, and $87,000 over prior year. Total cost of operations, $6.7 million. So you simply subtract your revenues minus your total cost of operations, and we ended up with a net surplus of $55,821 on a plan of $2,452, compared to prior year $72,225,000, $16,404 variance. This was the financial reporting that was discussed earlier. This gives us a little picture when we allocate all the G&A costs out to the departments, how does that look? And so you can see the security revenue, if you read across the lines, this is on a yearly basis exactly what we did for the budget, compared to the budget. And so all the numbers that are in red are negative variances. All the numbers that are in black are positive variances. Security, we spent $23,000 more than our budget, and nearly $500,000 on labor. And recently we have increased our patrols, and so you will see some more patrolling out there. Golf had a great year, $567,000 in revenue. Pro Shop merchandise was extremely high this year, along with our guest fees. And so, and this is both Pro Shop operations and golf maintenance operations. And so we spent $418,000 between those two departments on a budget of $438,000 for a positive variance of $19,490. Again, some of that was influenced by the lack of labor staffing, and so we would prefer that to be a little closer to the actual budget. Roads and Grounds was right on budget. We did $178,000 in revenue, mainly that's from new housing starts and also transfers. We had a record year for transfers of properties. 247 properties exchanged hands this year, and we had 53 new housing starts. So that is just a great year. The issue now, though, is there's not many homes for sale, used homes for sale, for resale, and so we started off the year a little bit slow. But at any rate, Roads and Grounds finished just a small $3,464 behind their plan year to date. Sports and Rec, believe it or not, campground revenue has remained strong throughout the whole year. That's our main driver of revenue, along with all the classes at the PAC. So we had $48,000 in revenue, and we had a $16,750 positive variance to budget for Sports and Rec. Facilities maintenance, we had one of our facilities maintenance, our most senior worker, that was down most of the year with some injuries, and so our labor number was down. Usually we spend a little bit more on facilities maintenance, but we spent $2,900 less than our budget. Obviously, in facilities maintenance, that's a number that you want to spend all of your budgeted numbers. Food and beverage, historic revenues for food and beverage, that's the highest that we've ever achieved in food and beverage. Congratulations to John Thomas, Chef Thomas, and the Food and Beverage Committee. $1.446 million. That is compared to when I came here, we're at about $800,000. So we could see just a really nice increase. The Brazos room renovation, you can just see it on paper, just the effects of that. And control our cost right across the board there, and that is a positive number, small number of $1,175 on a plan to lose $24,000, positive variance of $25,791. Communications, strong ad revenues throughout the year, $232,000. Had a small missed plan, just had some expenses on the expense line of $123. So we had a missed plan of $11,439 for communications. Inn had a good year, $143,000 in revenue for the Inn. Just a small missed plan of $262. So we were right on plan for the Inn. The marina, it's good to see that we have a full lake. All of our wet slips are full now. All of our storage units are full, and the outside parking is also full. So we had nice revenues throughout the year in marina. Except for our gas revenue. Obviously, it's hard to be competitive with our gas compared to some of the larger operations. And we just had a $418 missed plan, as you can see on the far right, under variance. Membership services, volunteer lunch and the election expenses, those are two major items that go into that number, and also all the coffee and tea that we serve for events. We had a miss of $5,600. Stables operation remained full throughout most of the year. Now we have a waiting list. And the stables actually made a little money, $1,600 on a plan to make $1,500 or $1,154, $458 positive to plan. So you can see our revenues there. These are departmental revenues, and we have assessment revenues, $3 million in total department revenues, and a $20,510 positive variance. This is looking at when the allocation, when we allocate out our G&A costs. This is very interesting. All the numbers on the left-hand side and the expenses stay the same. Income and loss stay the same. And then you can see the allocation out to each department. So this is the allocation on a yearly basis, what we allocated out to each department. And then you subtract that, the revenue minus expenses minus income minus your indirect overhead, and you get the net cost of each department. And so this is for a year, and then if on the far right, that's what each member paid for the amenities for the whole year. And these are in descending order, so you can see our most expensive, or the amenity that costs the most, obviously, is our golf course, $256. Security is next, no surprise, at $210. Roads and grounds, $183. Sports and rec, $176, and then you can see the rest of the numbers there. The food and beverage department for the whole year costs each member $92.73. So I think that's quite a value. And the stables, $7.45. That's what it costs for the whole year. So you add our member assessments. If you add up all of that, that's all the member assessments that we collected throughout the whole year. Add our fees to that, and our net surplus, as I mentioned earlier, $55,821. Really interesting comparison on total revenues and expenses. You can see that we've had revenues go up every single year. On the bottom, those are the net, so simply the total revenues minus the net. This was a really good year for net increase of membership. We added 45 members, so that you can see the rest of the years there. That we had a great year last year and hope to have another one this year. That's extremely important that we have a net increase of members. And net profit, you can see the $55,000 for this year and the other years there. As graphically showing, that is the type of graph that you like to see, ascending graph from low to high, revenues going up each year. And here's our net profit and loss between 2013 and 2017 in a graphical form. Capital Reserve Fund as of October 31st, again, this is at the end of our fiscal year. We had cash on hand of $647, investments mainly in CDs of $1.6 million. Reserve fund as of October 31st, $2,268,819. This is the capital asset 10-year forecast. These are year-ending cash balances, and this includes all of the items that we have set up for replacement. A few years ago, the staff went out and inventoried all 1,400 of our assets, and then we determined how much that asset was going to cost in the future, and it's how long that asset was going to last, and it was plugged into this form. And so these are the year-ending balances based on replacement only. This does not include any new amenities. And you can see the ending balance of 2018 will be $2.1 million. And then you can see the irrigation system. We expect to do that over 2 years. By board policy, we cannot drop below $500,000. So we're going to have to be very careful in 2020. We're at $514,000. And then obviously when we get into 2021, we will only be able to spend the amount between $1.2 million and $500,000 for capital expenditures. And then as we go through the year, you can see the capital reserve fund increasing up to $2.9 million in 2027. Road and Drainage Fund, that was before we paid out the project, but the total road and drainage fund as of October 31st, $1.2 million. And Mr. Treasurer, Mr. President, that concludes my financial report for fiscal 2017.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Bartholomew. Any questions or comments from the board?
Mr. President, I have a comment I'd like to make here.
Mr.
I'd like to recognize that Doug Green was instrumental in putting this report together and putting all these numbers together. So without him, we couldn't have done that. So I just want to make that for the record.
I'd like to add for the record that I had some effort in a little part in this effort, but Bob Cote really did this. I mean, this, especially the allocation of overhead, and our overhead was running $1.5 million, and it all showed up in the Michael's account under G&A, and it really was not a good way to run a business. So we spent considerable amount of time. Bob Cote got an ad hoc committee together with several members that had quite a lot of experience in accounting, and came up with a plan on allocating the overhead back to the departments that were actually consuming the services that Michael and his staff provides, like billing and purchasing. And so I'd like to compliment Mr. Cote for his effort.
So we have this little bromance going, but they work real hard. And really, one other thing that there's a lot of issues involved in this report we just saw, and I do have some questions and comments, but I would like to recognize that I know Doug worked real hard and had a lot of angst about the capital asset reserve fund not going below $500,000. And one of the drivers of that was how we were going to do the Gulf irrigation project. And with his help, by dividing that project up into 2 years, we're going to keep that fund above $500,000. So we've started the process. We have begun the process of hiring a design consultant this year, and then in fiscal 2019 and 2020, we'll divide that project up and get that long delayed project completed. So thanks to all the folks in our financial committees to make that happen. Now I have a couple comments or questions. I've always wondered, I don't know, maybe this is not the, I shouldn't have waited so long, but you talk about transfers. Is it a good or bad thing when a community has a lot of transfers? That means that a lot of people are selling their homes or leaving Pecan. So are transfers good or bad for the community?
Transfers are good. Anytime you can bring in revenue, it's good.
Okay, all right. Well, to me, it seems that either people are dying or they're leaving. One of the things that we'll move into the next year's financial considerations are the percentage of labor costs with respect to total revenue. And so while those costs are high as a percentage of total revenue, we should look at all of the factors that affect that, including the fact that Doug has pointed out, and I agree, that our revenue from dues is artificially low, causing our percentage of labor costs then to be high. So that's something we're struggling with. Is it too high? Is it at the right target number? And so next year's board will be considering that. The last thing I wanted to do is recognize the Food and Beverage Committee. When I joined the board, I soon discovered that the House Food and Beverage Committee had been disbanded for a number of reasons, and that was, for such an important part of our community, I thought that was not right. And so we reinstituted the House Food and Beverage Committee. I'd like to recognize, I know he's here, I'd like to recognize Lou Turner, where is he, Lou? Stand up. And he and his committee worked real hard to respond to the community's needs over the past several years with your committee. And what you've seen now is a return of our membership to the clubhouse. I've always believed that Pecan's food program was the best restaurant in Hood County. It still is. And so thanks to you, Lou, and your member committee for helping that happen, working with our staff. Thank you, Lou. The next item is a formal requirement for us to approve the board actions that took place over the past year. In my comments on Thursday, I really enumerated many of them, probably not all of them, and you can go back to our website to see what those are. But over the year, we have done a lot of things based on what this board has approved. So I'd like to invite a motion from the floor to approve all of those actions from the past year. Mr. Kreis.
Mr. President, I move to approve the actions of the Board of Directors for fiscal year 2017.
Do we have a second? Mr. McComas.
Mr. President, I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second from the audience. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Well, good. That worked. That was cool. Thank you. Mr. Bartholomew, we'd like to invite you to give a manager's report and your assessment of the state of the organization.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're going to talk a little bit about the State Association, but before we do, I'd like to recognize some of our key staff members. Our Executive Administrative Assistant, Mary Smith. Thank you, Mary. You've been here 11 years. Clubhouse, John Thomas. Clubhouse Manager, 8 years. John, thank you. Communications Manager, David Jeffries, 11 years. Our Controller, Janishevsky, she's down at the PAC, 12 years. Golf Course Superintendent, Michael Underwood, 19 years. Our golf professional, Bobby White, 28 years. Thank you, Bobby. Roads and Grounds Manager, Daniel Van Padden, 6 years. Daniel, thank you very much. And Sports and Recreation Manager, Keith Castellan, 23 years. Thank you very much. And thank you for all of our staff. We have a great staff. And let's take a look at the org chart, as a matter of fact. I know you can't read those numbers, but those are all the individuals I just talked about up on top on that green line. And then just to tell you a little bit about how many people are in each department. So in our security department, we have 13 full-time and 8 part-time. We have hired a new security supervisor. His name is Harold Adelot. His last position was security supervisor over at Mira Vista, a local gated community. Previous to that, he was on the police force of the Toller Department. Did corporate security for Southwest Airlines, and also was a police officer in Little Rock. So Harold brings us a lot of experience, and he'll be starting next week. But we have 13 full-time and 8 part-time people in our security department. Roads and Grounds, only 14 full-time people, and their department takes care of 300 acres of common property, including sports field, tennis grounds, clubhouse grounds, also all 56 miles of roads. So those 14 people are split up between roads and grounds, and sometimes when there's big projects, of course, Daniel brings them all together to work on that one project. Maintenance and ACC. David Jeffries' department, comms production and IT, 2 individuals. Food and beverage, this is kind of a rolling target. We have a lot of part-time people, but 28 full-time and 35 part-time in our food and beverage department. Golf department, 1 full-time and 7 part-time down in the golf shop. And Mr. Underwood, 6 full-time and 4 part-time, or 8 full-time equivalents. So just think about that, 8 people to take care of the entire golf course. That's quite a task, but his staff does a great job. Keith Castellan's department, 2 full-time, 12 part-time. And finally, our controller has 3 full-time people in her department. 78 full-time and 56 part-time, 144 total. This is a interesting graph. At the end of our fiscal year, we're at 3,050 members, and you can see the growth over the years. Interestingly, when the recession hit in 2009, everything came to a halt. There was virtually no building, and that took about 3 years to make a comeback. And slowly but surely, we've made a comeback, and now last year, we're all the way up to 45 net members, and 3,050 is the number. You've all seen this many times before, how much you pay. One note here, only $90.75 of your assessment goes to operations. So each month we get $90.75. The Capital Asset Reserve Fund is also benefited by the initiation fees. So the initiation fees below 3,000 members go into this account in addition to the $8 dedicated. We have $9 dedicated to the Road and Drainage Fund. This will not sustain us throughout the history of the association. As you can see, $10 drops off in 2024. And so we'll have to have a resident vote to make sure we keep that $10 in the Road and Drainage Fund and keep the roads the way they should be. So when we first thing we do when we look at the budget for this year, we go and talk about our operating assumptions. And our operating assumptions for this year, well, revenues were going to go up 4.7% over prior year. We plan for 25 net new members, and the rest is due to operational increases. Labor expenses going up 5.8%. We are able to add one housekeeping position. That position is mainly taking care of all the buildings outside of the clubhouse. Addition of one grounds person, as I mentioned, a very needed position. And addition of one maintenance position, predominantly for painting. Obviously, there's a lot of things to paint. And so we hire somebody that's an expert painter, and he's already started out on the golf course restrooms. He's going to move over to the tennis building next, and then he'll come back to the clubhouse. And the plan is to have him actually paint the exterior of the clubhouse. Operating expenses projected to increase 5.7% due to repairs in aging facilities and equipment. Our insurance premium increases. Our commercial insurance went up 7% last year. If you remember, a few years ago we had wind and hail damage in excess of $1 million. So obviously your premium increases will go up. Rising supply costs, wildlife management, and costs related to increased departmental revenues. If your revenues are going to go up, your expenses are going to go along with that. So what does that all look like when you roll it up into the big numbers? Our member assessments going up 1.1%. That is 25 net new members. And other income is our operating departments. So we have our operating departments going up from $3.4 to $3.578 million, an increase of 4.7%. And total operating revenue is going up 2.9%. And so we're almost a $7 million business, getting really close, $6.9 million. Cost of goods sold, as your revenues increase, so does your cost of goods sold. And you subtract your total operating revenues from your cost of goods sold to get your GOP, gross operating profit. And from that, labor and taxes and benefits are taken out. $3.9 million is what we expect to spend with the addition of our new positions and a 2.5% merit increase pool. Operating departments going up 5.7%. And total operating expenses for the year, $5,970,000. And so if you subtract all of those, you can see that we have a break-even, a small break-even of $2,900 compared to our forecast this year of $141,000. Capital projects, it was a busy year for capital projects in 2017. A lot of it was equipment. You can see some of the bigger numbers there. We just had a wide variety of things that we improved last year. I'll show you a couple of them. This is just recently installed Chaney campground. As I said, gets busier and busier, so we wanted to maintain that. Those are brand new grills that are also used as fire pits. Just take that little grill, it swings off, and then you can have your fire at night. We're going to continue to improve the campground. It's such a nice amenity. These are some of the equipment. That's an excavator on the left-hand side. You can see the attachments there. That is great for ditch cleaning, used about every single day in the roads and grounds. And the dump truck that we use, obviously, quite a bit in the roads and grounds department. Golf course equipment, tractor used pretty much every day, and the sprayer. When you're managing greens, greens are very susceptible to diseases, and so Mr. Underwood is a licensed applicator, and that's our new spray unit, and that gets used very, very often and controls all the weeds and herbicides and pesticides that you get on the golf course. 2017 road and drainage projects, Westover diversion project, $325,000. Obviously, they're doing some more work out there. That was because the contractor poked a hole in the sewer line. So when that big rain came, obviously, that all went into the creating the little crater that we had, and they are in the process, under warranty, of fixing that as we speak. Front entrance road, $688,000. We are going to extend the safety rail. As you might have noticed, it already has been used by an individual. In total, road and drainage projects, just over $1 million for next year. And this is a Westover diversion project. This is a portion that you don't see. We had some residents that were very nice to let us go through their easement in between their house. And this is the outfall that goes to the Brazos River. So there's a series of catch basins. You can see on the right-hand side a series of catch basins. And then it goes underneath through some underground piping, comes out here, and then on the way to the Brazos River. Front entrance road.
Hey, Michael, let me just point out that this was a record year for rainfall here, and at the Thursday meeting I asked if there were any drainage issues, and Michael was happy to report that there were none. So I think we're keeping up with the drainage problems that we face in the community. And now I don't know, all bets are off about what will happen with the Park Place and those new lakes and how that construction affects drainage in that area. But I appreciate the fact that you're doing all that.
Certainly, with the help of the Infrastructure Committee, the projects that we've done over the last 3 or 4 years have helped the drainage, but still there's projects yet to be completed. Our capital projects for 2018, you can see in the clubhouse, our major project is the Magnolia Room, actually taking the wall out and putting a divider between those rooms. It'll make it a lot more useful. You can have some small groups in there, up to 30 or 40 people. Close the door for 2-car groups, or have a large car group in that room. Lobby restroom renovations, those are all the restrooms on this floor, $75,000. We do all of our laundry. You may not know it, but we launder all of our sheets, the linens, tablecloths, and napkins. Saves us a lot of money. And in food and beverage, we're going to need some new tables for $4,500 this year. Our copier is in and operational. We do need some more golf course equipment. And the bunker liner project, if you're a golfer, you've noticed that project is underway. Roads, grounds, and maintenance, equipment of $152,000. Plainview Park renovation of $140,000. And the West Circle improvements, you've noticed a trellis out back. That is just the beginning of the project, and you'll see more and more improvements coming throughout the year. The Green Thumb Garden Club just does a great job. You can see some recent improvements to the front circle, and soon we'll be doing some work on the back circle. Sports and recreation, some stables improvements, $17,000. The club here at the clubhouse, the pool, at the clubhouse has already been resurfaced in anticipation of a busy pool season. Pack improvements and equipment. We put in all LED lights, thanks to Keith Casterlin for finding a great rebate program. So we have new lights throughout the whole pack now, LEDs that'll last 10 years and save the association a big sum of money in electricity costs over the years. And $20,000 for the pack playground. Security building and improvements, mainly to our security gates. Total spend next year anticipated at $784,000. Road and drainage projects, these are some of the projects on the right-hand side that the Infrastructure Committee will be looking at. Road repairs, you can see some of the areas that we're going to need some repairs. Might have noticed Plantation Drive, we're getting some delamitation of the surface that we put there, the chip seal a couple years ago. So Daniel and his crew have found a patch that'll work. It'll get us through a while, but at some point, Ravenswood is probably the worst. Prospect Hill, obviously. We crack seal, Daniel's crew goes out and crack seals every road every year, but you can only patch and crack seal so much until you have to replace. So the road and drainage budget is $847,000, and the order of those projects will be determined in the near future. Always interesting to take a look at the PAC. There's been such a big success for us over the years. 32,000 visits to the PAC last year. That's just a tremendous number. PAC pool, believe it or not, 20,052 people came to both of our pools, an average of 206 people each and every day. So the pools are active each and every day. We have 19 different fee-based classes at the PAC. There's a little something for everybody. So look at the columns, and there's all sorts of classes, cooking classes, guitar lessons, a lot of stuff for the kids. And you can see some of the upcoming events are designed for spring break, like the slime party. I don't think any of you will be going to that, but that's a good one for the kids. Superhero drawing camp. We try to keep the kids busy during their spring break. I want to thank the volunteers. We have about 300 volunteers that work in all areas of the association, not just in committees, but also clubs and other volunteers. Without the volunteers, obviously our payroll would not be sustainable. They do a great job, and so it is time to sign up. Our volunteer luncheon, we do a thank you every year on Friday, May 11th this year. So if you served on a committee last year, please mark that on your calendar. That is coming up soon. Committee sign-ups are now at the front desk. If you served on a committee last year, you still need to sign up this year. All the committee resolutions are also at the front desk. Or you could just drop us a line on my GM direct line, and we'll go ahead and add you to the roster. The committee chairpersons will be approved at the board meeting of April 5th. During the month of April, the committee chairpersons will decide their committee, and the final committee members will be voted on during the board meeting on Thursday, May 3rd. So all in all, the association, the State Association is good, and I want to thank everybody, thank all the volunteers, all the staff, thank you to the outgoing board members, and more importantly, thank you to each and every one of you in the audience. And Mr. President, that concludes my report.
Well, I'd like to echo your comments about our staff. They are familiar to all of us because of their hard work, and we appreciate every one of them. Okay, moving along. Our next item is to talk about our election and nomination process, and so I'd like to yield the floor to the chair of our nominating committee, Mr. Sprinkle.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that this is a big day, as you've mentioned many times, for you and Ross and Dick, but in many ways this is an even bigger day for 5 of the residents of our community, and those are our board candidates for 2018. And at this time it's my pleasure to introduce them one final time before the votes are counted. And if you would please stand and then hold your applause until after I introduce all the candidates. First is Dick Brozak.
We can go all the way down to here, can't we?
Scott Karsten.
Yeah.
Crystal David. Ron Liddell. And Joel Nyman. Let's give these folks a hand.
Okay.
And so those results will take place when Mr. Hartman comes back with the results of the election, but we'll move forward with our agenda. Mr. Secretary, would you start the process of nominating the required committee chairs, please?
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to make a motion that the members Robert Maurer, Rick Long, Bob Mossbarger, Jerry Althouse, Mark Zeck be approved for the 2018-2019 Bylaws Committee, and Board Representative Vincent Springle, period.
So we have a motion for the chair and the members of the Bylaws Committee and our board representative, Mr. Sprinkle. May we have a second?
I second that motion, Mr. President.
And so we have a motion and a second to approve the chair and the members of the Bylaws Committee. All those in favor? Any opposed? The motion passes.
Mr. President, I also would like to move that Bob Maurer be approved as the chairman of the Bylaws Committee.
Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Maurer. Yeah. Where are you?
I did.
All right. Don't be hiding. No, he's here. There he is. Bob Maurer is a former board member and really is so knowledgeable. He's a go-to guy when we have a question about how this organization is governed. So we thank you for your continued service.
Thank you.
Mr. Secretary.
Mr. President, we now want to open nominations for board officers.
Mr. President, I'd like to nominate Doug Green to be named as Vice President for 2018-2019 board year.
Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
Do we have any other nominations? So for the office of Vice President for 2018, all those in favor for Mr. Green, raise your right hand. Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Kite.
Yes, sir. I would like to make a motion that Bob Cote be named as treasurer for the 2018-19 board year.
We have a motion for Mr. Cote to be a treasurer. Do we have a second?
I second that motion.
We have a motion and second for Mr. Cote. Are there any other nominations? Mr. Cote, did you want to make a comment?
Yeah, I have a comment to make on this. I'd like to have the record reflect that my preference was not to be the treasurer, but to remain a non-officer as on the audit committee. And I didn't ask to be the treasurer, but if it is the board's preference, the majority of the board's preference that I be the treasurer, I'll be happy to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cote. Are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor of Mr. Cote as treasurer, any opposed? Congratulations, Mr. Cote.
Mr. President, we have one more nomination. I'd like to make a motion that Vince Sprinkle be named as secretary for the 2018-2019 board year.
Do we have a second?
Mr. President, I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second for
Vince Sprinkle.
Vince Sprinkle to be trying to keep up.
How soon we forget.
As secretary, are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor of Mr. Sprinkle as secretary. Any opposed? Congratulations, Judge Sprinkle. Okay, so in accordance with Article 8, Section 2 of our bylaws, I'd like to acknowledge that and ask for a motion that Mr. Eads, Roger Eads, assume the position of president for the 2018 and 19 board year. Do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Green. We have a motion and a second for Roger Eads to serve as president. Are there any other nominations? If not, all those in favor? Any opposed? Roger, congratulations. We appreciate your willingness to serve. And so, yeah, so we can applaud that and applaud the officers of the board. Thank you. And so at this time, looking very carefully around the room to see if Mr. Hartman has snuck in, and he has not, and then I'd like to call for a recess And so we will recess until Mr. Hartman comes back with the results of the election. And so, as they say in the military, smoke them if you got them, and we'll call back to order when we get it. Thank you. If you would take your seats, we're about to reconvene, please. Mr. Simsky, you want to sit down, please? Find a seat.
There's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. So that's the order, their names ordered.
One of the strengths of our community is that we as members continue to step up and serve as members of the board and as board officers. And as I look around the room, I know there are a number of officers and there are a number of former directors. So if you were a board director in the past, could you stand, please? Let's see who you are. Look at all these guys and women. Thank you. And if you were a board president, remain standing. Board president. Who's here? There's Wynette and John and Ron and Doug and Jim Miller. So thank you all for your service. That's really great. Thank you for coming. Okay, next item of business is for Mr. Hartman to present the results of the results of the election to the secretary.
Already done. I already gave it to him, so he has the results.
Thank.
So, Mr. Secretary.
Are we ready? Is this on? Yes. Okay. Mr. President, these are the results of this year's election. Ballot issue number 1, the $9 capital assessment loan. 1,458 votes were cast, 648 for, 810 no. That ballot initiative fails. Ballot issue number 2, the tennis and pickleball courts. 1,458 ballots voted, 684, 770 no votes. Again, this initiative failed. 47% for, 53% fail, 53% no votes. Ballot issue number 3, the candidate recruitment committee, 1,381 votes. Votes yes, 1,093. Votes no, 288. That issue passes. Ballot issue number 4, remove membership committees from bylaws. 1,382 votes cast, 948 for, 434 against. The percentage was 69%. That initiative passes. Ballot issue number 5, to add the audit committee to bylaws. 1,396 votes cast, 1,204 votes yes, 102 votes no. Yes was 86%, no was 14%. That initiative passes. For the board of directors, this is the order. The most number of votes were for Dick Brozak, 903. Christy David, 898. Ron Liddell, 880. Scott Carsden, 854. Joel Nyman, 455. Mr. President, that concludes the results of the election.
Christy David and Scott Carsden. Would you please go over the results of the director's election, please? Make sure we have
Dick
it.
Brozak was first with 903 votes. Crystal David was second with 898 votes. Ron Liddell was third with 880 votes. Scott Carsden was fourth with 854 votes. Joel Nyman was fifth with 455 votes.
Okay. Thank you, first of all, to the election committee. I don't know if any of those have returned, or is that who's standing in the back of the room, Joe? Okay, well, we thank them for their effort. I know it's a hard job every year. Thank you so much. I have to tell you that I'm disappointed that our ballot initiatives for the member assessment and the approval of the new projects did not pass. So the new board will have to consider that, and it is the will of the community to, as they express themselves in this election. And I'd like to offer my first congratulations to, first of all, to all those who ran, to the board of directors who ran. Thank you so much for doing that. And I'd also like to offer my congratulations to our 3 new board members, and that is Dick Brozak, that's with a B, not Prozac, Dick Brozak, Christy David, and Ron Liddell. Thank you so much for and congratulations to those. Okay. Now, I'd like to yield the floor to our legal counsel to administer the oath of office, first of all, to the new officers on the board. If you would please stand, the new board officers. And our legal counsel is Ashley Kurian. I pronounced it correctly now. Before I didn't this time. And would someone give her a microphone, please? Here. Okay.
Thank you. Okay. And we're going to have you face out this way.
You want us to do this?
Just stand right up here so we can get you on camera, please. And we'll have you face this way, and I'll stand up to this side. Okay. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of, and state your office, of Pecan Plantation Owners Association and Pecan Plantation Country Club, and will, to the best of my ability, defend and fulfill the dictates and obligations imposed upon me by the bylaws of said association and the various restrictive covenants of Pecan Plantation Subdivision, without bias or favor toward any member, so help me God. So help me God. Congratulations. Thank you.
Roger, would you come over here, please? The last official act I have is to congratulate and transfer the authority of the president to Roger Eads. And I'd like to repeat again that it has been a singular honor and distinction for me to serve as first as board member and vice president, now as president for the year for this organization. I love it. I love doing it. I love this community. I love everyone that's in this room and all the folks that think about us as an organization. We are the best community in Texas, and I can't imagine a better place to live and a better obligation to lead. And so, Roger, I congratulate you. And the last thing that we do, Dick and Ross, is to yield our seats to the new officers as Roger leads them in the new oath of office.
Again, this is, I believe, a great opportunity for me. I want to spend just a moment here. I want to reconfirm how much I appreciate Bob and Dick and Ross, and his Dick already escaped. I thought he'd already left. We couldn't have done and worked better together without the leadership of these three. So I'd like everybody to take again and applaud for these, for the great work that they did this past year. And I want to thank the board that I'm currently serving with and look forward to working to the new 3 members. But most off, I want to thank the membership. I really do, because we do. You elected us, and through this election, even though I don't agree with it, that was the election that the members chose. So we'll need to start over this year, and we will work together, and I assure you we will listen to you, and we will work together as a board and work with the committees and work with you to achieve, to make Pecan a better place. Okay, I would now at this time call upon you to administer the oath to the new board members, please. Could the new board members please step forward?
Okay, raise your right hand, please. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the duties of a director of Pecan Plantation Owners Association and Pecan Plantation Country Club, and will, to the best of my ability, defend and fulfill the dictates and obligations imposed upon me by the governing documents of said association and the various restrictive covenants of Pecan Plantation Subdivision, without bias or favor toward any member. So help me God. Congratulations.
Please take your seat at the table. I already feel more important. I'm only sitting with 2 people instead of 4 down here, so the desk is bigger. At this time, unless there's any other business, is there any comments from the floor? If there are none, this meeting is adjourned.